Hello. In this video we're going to have a quick look at how we extract one of the most useful natural fibres in the British woodland, and that is stinging nettle fibres. So here I have got stinging nettle stems, and these are part way through being processed. So obviously if we're processing stinging nettle fibres, we want to try as much as possible to avoid getting stung. What stings you in a stinging nettle is formic acid, and it's injected into you by the little hairs that you see all the way along the stems of the plant. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the foliage and the little hairs. We'll put those to one side for a minute, and here I've got 3 fresh stems still covered in their foliage and their stinging hairs. So what we find is that much like the foliage, the actual hairs, if anything, their growth habit is slightly upwards. So if we adhere to the old adage of grasping the nettle and use a little bit of confidence and grip firmly, we can use friction and our finger ends to slide all the way down the stem, and in theory we'll fold up the stinging hairs without getting stung. The friction will drag them out, okay? So just go like that, all the way down, and sometimes you do get 1 or 2 stings. I actually didn't get any that time, but the key thing is it's only 1 or 2. So we're rid of all of that foliage, and we'll do a couple more runs through the fingers just to make sure we've got rid of all the hairs, because obviously they're harder to see, so it's better to be thorough. So that's that one done. My luck's good today. Got a single sting here. That's 2 done. This last one. And if you should get stung, just make sure you picked a bit of ripwater plant on it beforehand, crush the leaf up, rub it on, and the natural antihistamine will pretty quickly shut down the stinging sensation. Right, so we've got our 3 stems removed of most of the stings and all of the foliage, but now we've got to get these nice long fibres off the outside of the bark. Now the best way to do this is to actually crush the stem up a little bit first. So I'm going to use this tree stump here. And in fact, even better than that, I need a nice little rolling pin. This bow drill will do fine. And then we just want to go and hear that crunching. What we don't want to do is damage the fibres. We want to crush the stems flat. We want the fibres to be continuous all the way to the end, so we can get as long a fibres out of here for our cordage. There's a few woody bits in the bottom, the rest of it crushes more easily, so often you only need the rolling pin for the very bottom of the stalk and do the rest between your finger and the thumb. So now we want to open it out. So I'm going to put my thumbnail in there and find on one of the faults where it's cracked as we're squashing it. Open it up, get your thumbnail in and try and run a continuous split all the way down the stem. And we're going to effectively flatten it out. You sometimes need to use your nail just to encourage the split to stay straight when you get to these growth nodes. You can just push your nail in there and carry the split on all the way down to the end. Now we need to remove the pithy, woody inner fibres from the outer bark fibres, so bend it back on itself. And obviously the pithy fibres are not as flexible, they come away, and we're left with this. And then we just want to strip these down a little bit, because we want relatively fine fibres to make neat cordage. So we're just splitting them along their natural weaknesses. Sometimes you find if your nettle stem's too long, you go like this for your arms and you get to the end of your arms and you still haven't pulled it all apart, in which case split them over your knee. So this one's quite long, I only need to show you that in a second. Okay, so we come back up somewhere near the top, bend it back on itself, the woody fibres break, and we can get those bark fibres off. And we can see, you always end up with these natural, at the growth nodes, these natural joints and then little gaps in the middle, so that's where you want to open it up, and then it will start tearing along its own natural folds. I'll just do this last stem, which is a little bit longer, and I can show you how to deal with those longer fibres. So we've got those for 1 minute. So this stem's a little bit longer. And obviously the longer the stem, the less joins you're going to have in your string, and the stronger it's going to be. So long stems are good, because we want long fibres. Go, split it all the way to the end. So again, somewhere up near the thicker bit, bend it back on itself. Get those fibres on. You've got to be careful you don't leave any woody bits on here, because once they begin to dry, they will become very woody and hard, and then you won't be able to use that bit of fibre for anything where it needs to be flexible, like making cordage. I've got quite long fibres on this stem, so if we're struggling to split them, you can always just split them over your knee like that. Short fibre. And we'll add these to the other ones. And now we need to let these dry before we try and make anything from them, because otherwise the shrinkage, as they shrink, will cause the twist to come back out of any cordage that you make, and it will all unravel itself. So we're going to put these up here and leave them to air dry. That should dry nicely up there, and I shall get back to my pile of other stuff.